helping you with Acorn and RISCOS computing.
Right, so we've got Graeme Shrimpton here, who's up in Middlesbrough, I believe, to talk about TWIMP.
Good evening, everybody. There's a few familiar faces on here, but most people I've never met before. So I'm Graeme. I started off programming on the BBCs, and my dad was a school teacher, used to bring them home in the school holidays, and we went up to the RISCOS computers, and eventually got round to buying my own, and then left the scene not long after Acorn disappeared. Got back into it, or tried to get back into it when the Raspberry Pis came out, but really got back into it when COVID hit. So I went and bought a different Raspberry Pi and signed up on the forums and such. Getting back into it, one of the things I did like to program was the WIMP, getting some desktop applications up and running and working. But coming back to it, I realised how fiddly the WIMP is. There's a lot of things in there that it doesn't do. It expects you to do quite a lot of the work. And I presume that's probably from the history of trying to keep it small, the actual code. So one day I was writing for a website and I was using HTML, which is just a markup text language. And it just suddenly crossed my mind, why can't we have something like that for designing windows and icons and such? So I decided to try and write something for RISCOS, and I came up with TWIMP, which it's a module, and it has a lot of SWIs, and instead of having blocks and pointers, pretty much everything is strings and numbers instead. Most things are strings to keep things nice and simple and in English. The best way to go ahead with this is if I share my screen. Well, I'll need to start up my. There we go. Now, hopefully everybody should be able to see.
Yep, that looks
the screen on there. Good. Right. So the best way to demonstrate it is to actually create an application live. And we're going to be starting off with a blank basic file rather than any kind of a template. Oh, didn't work for a second there. Good. So I've basically created a very empty template application, and in here we have the basic run image file, which is blank. Let me just move that out of the way. Ooh. I have a lot of problems with Zoom. Won't let me move this window. Right, that's going to be awkward. I can move that out of the way. Very strange. I'm not sure why I can't move that window, so this might be a bit awkward. Right, so to start with TWIMP, what I'll do is I'll just create an error handler. I've got a few keyboard shortcuts so that you don't have to sit around waiting all the time. To start a TWIMP application, we just call the TWIMP module, and literally just the start, and then our application name. So I'm going to do a program which will encrypt a file. It's a very bad example, but it's good enough for a demonstration purposes. So to start the program, you just call the TWIMP start with the application name, and TWIMP works out what version of the WIMP you're using and will decide how it's going to use the particular features that you use. You don't need to worry about doing different things for different versions of the WIMP. To end a program, you just call TWIMP end, and that should be enough. I'll save that off to start and end a program instantly. But obviously we're not going to see anything yet because it's starting and ending so quickly. So just like the normal WIMP, if you've ever used that before, we need to stay in a loop, which I've got a keyboard shortcut for. There we go. We need to stay in a loop until the user decides to quit the program. We have on line 5 the start of the repeat loop. Lines 6, 7, and 8 are basically copy and paste. And the important thing about this is line 8 comes out and it gives us a reason $, which is a string, as you'll probably know in BASIC. We can ignore the case block at the moment because it's got nothing in it. And we will loop around until reason $= equals quit. Quit is one of the things that TWIMP will send back to you if somebody goes onto the task manager and selects quit from there. So this program should now loop round and round. So if I run that, and if we open up task manager, we have our encrypt program running. And if we go to task encrypt, quit, it should end, and it does. It's definitely something not good with Zoom. Yeah, I'll bring that to the front again, yeah. Can't click on the top part of the screen for some reason. Yeah, this is awkward. Right. The easiest way of creating a TWIMP program, you don't have to do it this way, is using a text file. This is going to be... I wonder why I can't move these windows. Yeah, I'm going to have to flick between these two windows, I'm afraid. The easiest way is to use I can't even move these to the back. Let me try and move this window around. I don't know whether this will mess up the screen share at the moment. See if this helps. Ah, that's a bit better. I can move it there. Right. Sorry about this, just fighting with Zoom at the moment. Can I move it now? No. No. Do apologise about this. Let's see if I get the windows at least in a decent place. Then we don't need to move them very often. Right. Very strange. I've not had that problem before with Zoom. Okay. So we have a text file in the there we go. Right. Okay. We have a text file in the application directory. And we can load this text file in. And in this text file, we can have all of the definitions of the various things. In the run file, I will have called, yeah, I've called it TW app $. To load that file in, we will just call TWIMP load. And I'll use the system variable to it. And the file in there is called TW. Okay. All being well, if I run that, there should be no errors. It has loaded the file in, but there's nothing in it. So I can just quit the encrypt program again. In the text file, this is where we can define all of the icons, menus, windows, all of the standard things you would see in the WIMP. To define an item, you just put it in the angled brackets and say what it is that you actually want to define. The first thing we'll do is make an icon bar. So it's just simple as typing in icon bar, and we will use a sprite. So you just type in the keyword and a colon. Some of the keywords don't have colons, and then the parameters afterwards. So this would be the sprite name, and our application should have the sprite name. TW app, And that should be enough to put an icon on the icon bar. And there we go. So we have that application running on the icon bar. If I click on the icon, nothing happens because we haven't programmed anything in to do that. So let's see if we can go and get a menu running with the quit option on it. To make a menu, as you probably would have guessed, it's menu. But this time, I'm going to give the menu a name. Every item that you make can have an optional name, and that's what you would use to refer to it, either in this text file or in your program file, so that you don't need to worry about window handles and icon handles. So we have menu, and I will give it a name, and I'll just call it icon bar menu. I will give it some text. You can call it text, or you can call it title. This is the nice thing about having text, is that it can be done in more than one way. You'll notice I've left a space after title, which I didn't after the sprite. It's very flexible. So we'll call this encrypt, and that'll be the title of the menu. The next thing we'll create is an item, which is a menu item. We can either call it item for short, oops, or you can call it menu item. Either will do. And we'll give it the text. And obviously we would want that to be called quit to fit in with the standard. That creates a menu, but we haven't opened it. So if we go back to the icon bar itself, we can create actions in there, and TWIMP can have two different types of action, which we'll go through now. The first one we have, all of the actions begin with the keyword on, and we want to respond if somebody presses the menu button to open up that menu. So that's called on menu. And then we tell TWIMP what we want it to do. There's two different types, as I've just said, and one of the types begins with the subtract character, and all of those are things that TWIMP should try and handle itself. There's one called open, which will open anything that you try and tell it to open. We've already created the menu, so we want to open icon bar menu. And that should be enough to open up the menu. We click menu on the icon bar, and we have the quit option here. If I click quit, nothing happens. So we'll have to quit again from the task manager, hopefully for the last time. Close that. In all of these items, you can put options in here. So this one is on click, and on click is just a shortcut for whether you are clicking with, usually with select or adjust, or on a menu as well. This time I'm not going to put the subtract sign. I'm just going to type the word quit. Because we haven't put the subtract sign, that means instead of TWIMP trying to handle it, it will send that keyword back to your program as a text string, and that will land in reason $. So if we look at the basic program, that will land on line 9 and fill quit into reason $. There. Line 14, we're already handling quit. So hopefully if we run that, that will be enough that if we quit the quit option on the menu, it should run the on click. And there we go. So we have that basic program already with an icon on an icon bar and a menu working. And if I click menu, you might notice that you don't have to position the menu. TWIMP will work out a variety of things and try and put most things in a logical place, so you don't have to worry about positioning. That's something you do have to calculate on the WIMP. So there's a little job that TWIMP does in the background that you don't have to worry about. What we'll do, just to tidy that up a little bit, we will create So I've got menu and menu item. No, I've got item and menu item here. You can mix and match. We'll create an info box. And something you might have looked at is the icon bar. When I've created the icon bar item, I've put all of the things on different lines. But when I've created the menus, I've put all of the keywords and everything on one line. You can mix and match and choose, do whichever you prefer. There's no set format for that. So I could go up to the icon bar and put everything on one line. Wrong key. And that would still work. So if I run that, that will still work. We now have the info on the menu. So if I quit that, what I'll do is I'll undo that and put the icon bar back. So it's very flexible in the way that the format goes, so don't worry about the formatting. You can use tabs or spaces. You can even put new lines between things. On the info box, we will have a submenu come off there. And we will need to tell it what the submenu is. We'll call that window the About window. Now, if you've ever programmed the WIMP and you put a pointer to a submenu and it doesn't exist, you put a pointer to a wrong place, you'll end up with all kinds of crashes, address exceptions, data aborts, that kind of thing. TWIMP will work out that it doesn't exist and simply just not fill it in. It will just say there is no submenu. So that protects you from all of those kinds of crashes. We will create an About window. Now this is, it is a window, but it is a pre-formatted window. So it already has the icons and things in it. So I'm making an About item and I'm going to call it About, because you can call an item the same thing as the definition name. So when we go to this info, we should have a submenu pointing to an About. I will run this program because this makes it easier. We now have the info box and the info window is there, all filled in. So all of the labels are all filled in, the titles filled in. All we need to fill in is the purpose, the author, and the version. The name of the program you can override, but it is filled in from what we called on line 3 in the basic program, which was one we called TWIMP start. That's automatically filled in. To fill the others in, you just use what's on the left and fill it in. So encrypt author is, let's say, me, and version 1.23. That's enough to get an About window up and running and working. So in a few lines of code, we've got what could potentially take many hours if you were writing a basic program using the WIMP directly, or sometimes using some of the libraries that are essentially wrappers for the WIMP. We've got that up and running in just a handful of minutes. To create the window, that's just the window command. We'll call this main window. And instead of typing title or text all the time, there is a shortcut where you can just use equals. I'm going to use single quotes here. You can use single or double quotes, which will might become more obvious why you can use both later on, but it's your choice at the time. I don't know why I've called it encrypt, because I can't spell it on the keyboard. Encrypt. And it'd be good to define the size of the window as well. So we'll make the size, let's well, let's say I've got a smaller window here, haven't I? Let's say 1200 by 600. Again, we've created a window, but we haven't done anything to make it open. So I'll go back up to the icon bar and we'll say, well, we'll do something a bit more crazy, shall we? We'll do the unselect button. We'll tell TWIMP using the minus symbol to open the main window. But if we click adjust on the icon bar, we'll get it to close the main window. So we've now got 3 actions on the icon bar. Hopefully all of those should work. So if I click select, we have a window, and by default it opens in the center of the screen. If I click adjust, it should close it. It does. TWIMP will handle all the various things of moving the window around. These are things you normally have to program into the WIMP, even though it's fairly simple. You don't have to do it at all in TWIMP. And quits the program. What we want to do is we want to create an icon in the encrypt window. We want to be able to drag, let's say, a text file into that window. And we'll have some options and some radio buttons in there to select the type of encryption that we want. They're all going to be simple and pretty much useless in the real world. And then we want to make a menu to be able to save the encrypted file off. So we'll start with the file name and being able to drag a file into the window and fill that icon in with the file name. So just like the About window, there's a lot of icons which are predefined as well. So one of the icons is the display icon. And I'll give that a name. We'll call it the load file. And what do I need to define in here? Maybe the width of it, because it won't be wide enough. Let's say something like, is it 1160? Be about right. And that's enough to create an icon. Because it's a display icon, it'll have the 3D border. So we've now got an icon. There's no text in it, but it does have the 3D border in the format of the style guide. To put text in it, it's just the same. You can use text colon or the shortcut equals. So that one would fill it in with the word file name. So we've got what looks like a standard icon there. To make the program a bit easier though, I'm going to take that file name out and we'll see why that's a bit easier later on. What we need to be able to do is to be able to drag a text file to this icon. So there's lots of on events that you can do on the icon, such as the on click event, the on menu event, if you want something different. You can do them on drag, a huge amount. There's one called on load. So if you drag a file to it, it will respond to that. But you can also add on the end a particular file type, and a text file type you put in the hexadecimal version. And what I want to do is I want to return to the program. Let's say the words load file. What will happen there is when a text file is dragged to the icon, the word load file will come in this reason $ here. Nothing will happen because we're not responding to load file. So I'll do something in this reason statement. So when the reason $ is load file, what we'll do is we will fill this display icon in. Put a new line there to make it a bit clearer. We will fill this display icon in with the file name that was dragged in. The first thing is we need to know what that file name is. You can get a lot of information from a SWI called poll data. I'll move this window across a bit because the basic file is going to get a bit wider. The poll data SWI is one where you put in text what you want to read back, and we want the file name. And we'll store that in a variable called load file $. So that's enough to read the file name in and get it into a variable in BASIC. But now we need to update the text of that display icon. There's a SWI called update text. And we put in the name of the item that we want to update, which we called it load file. And then we put in the text we want to update it to, which was the load file $. I need to save that file off as well. All being well, I do need to find a text file, don't I? Got one in here. All being well, if I drag this file to here, that fills that in with the file name. So what's happened there is it's responded to here, sent load file back to reason $ in your program. We've read the file name in on line 12 and then updated the text on line 13. If you've ever used the WIMP before, we haven't had to worry about buffer lengths or redirection, indirection, anything like that. It's just one swipe and it handles it all for you. There is, if I drag the basic file in onto that, it doesn't load in. It also doesn't load in if we drag it to the window. And the reason it doesn't show us that file name when we drag to the window is because we've put the onload in the icon itself. If I move this onload and put it in the window instead, we should be able to drag a text file anywhere in the window, because now the window is responding. So if I drag it to the middle bottom, that works now. So where I can drag it anywhere in the window. So we've got the file name in the icon that we want to actually encrypt. I'll just do a comment there to split some of these windows and things up to make it look a bit clearer. What we want to do is to be able to save this file off. I think we'll do that next. So I'll make another line because I'm going to make a main menu. So we'll make a menu and we'll call it main menu. We'll give it the same title and encrypt. We'll put an item in there, which is to save. We can open that menu by going onto the main window and again doing an action on menu, open main menu. And this time it knows that the menu should be opened in the right place when I click the menu button. So it knows the difference between an icon bar and a window and works things out differently depending on the context. I would like to have that save button have a sub-menu. So we want to create a save window, and a save window can be done with just the item name save. And again, I'll just call it save. In fact, I'll call it save window to make it clearer. And now we should, there we go, have a modern style save window. If you have an older version of the WIMP, it'll show you the older version of the save window, which doesn't have the cancel button, slightly smaller one. So it's dynamically making things according to what operating system people are using. It would be nice if we could open up this save menu using a key press. So I'll do on key, so that's another action, but the key event takes the key afterwards, so I'll put in F3. But we'll also need to have the main window have the caret. At the moment, if you click on the window, it doesn't allow it to have the caret. So we'll just put in allow caret, and now when you click in the window, it will allow the caret to be in the window. And if I press F3, the window opens. And F3 also appears in the menu, giving us something looking nice and professional in just a few clicks. The save window itself, I'll change the file type. Let's say we'll save the encrypted file as can't remember whether I have to put the ampersand in front of that or not, but we'll try that. And we'll change the file name to encrypted. And now the save window should hopefully have changed. Oh, it does work, you don't need to put the ampersand in. So we've got the data file type and the file name, which was untitled before, now says what we've typed it in to be encrypted. To actually perform the save, we have another action called onSave, and we will return save file to our program because we're going to need to move that there. We are going to need to use the basic program to actually do the saving of the program. No, I won't do it in here. What I'll do is I'll put it in a little submenu, subroutine, a function, procedure, whatever they're called in BASIC these days. The proc save into proc. So we'll come into here when the save is initiated. All the messages, or most of the messages, are done by TWIMP. To find out the file name, it's exactly the same as what happened in the load file. So we read from the pull data the file name, and this time I'll put it into a save file $. And then what we'll do is we'll do a test. We will use a miscellaneous operation from TWIMP, which just opens a file to write to that file, to the save file, and we put in the file type. The reason I'm using the miscellaneous operations instead of using standard open and close is because if it all goes wrong, TWIMP does look out for crashes of your program and early closes, and it will close the file if it's opened it. So if we tell it to open it, will keep its eye out. I need to know the file handle. I'll call that FH%. And that should be enough actually to save a file, I think. Drag wasn't working there. And there we go. So I've saved it into this directory. Ah, see, there's an error. This file is already open. So if I close the application, I should be able to open it now. There we go. And that's because I've made the mistake. I've told it to close a file, but I haven't given it the file handle. But all being well, that file which was stuck open, can be deleted or recreated. In the save routine, we don't know what the load file name is. So what we can do is, because we put the load file name into that display icon, which was called load file, we will also read that icon back, the text from it. So what we'll do is we'll use TWIMP read, and the read command can read anything from any item. So you give it the name of where you want to read from. So that's the display icon. And then you tell it what you want to read. And we want to read the text. You could read anything in there. You could read the X value, the Y value, the width of the icon, whether it's selected, whether it's grayed out. So the read SWI is very powerful. So we're reading from this icon, the load file, the text into load file. And now we should be able to open that file for reading. Load file $. Actually, it would be better if I had these as load and save, wouldn't it? Save %. So I'll need to close save %, and I'll need to close load %. So that should open the file that we want to load, open the file we want to save to, and then close them both. What I'll do is I'll do a very simple encryption routine. It's going to be really bad. What we'll do is we'll just exclusive OR with some every byte. If you don't understand this bit, don't worry about this too much. Let's just say C3, but it should just show that it works. So while we're not at the end of the file, load %, in that off, we will put this written down somewhere. B% equals you get from the load file. We will exclusive OR with the ER. We'll see why I've put ER % in a variable a bit later on. So that does the encryption. If you don't understand what that does, don't worry about that. But it will change the byte. And we want to output it to the save file. All being well, that should allow me to drag the TW file into here and then save it off into here, and that gives us an encrypted version of the TW file. It's a terrible method for encryption, but it's good for demonstration purposes. Something we should really do is when we've loaded and saved the file is we should tell TWIMP that we have done it. And that's as simple as saved. And I didn't do it on the loaded one. TWIMP loaded. And that just makes sure that all messages that the WIMP needs are sent. One thing people seem to have struggled with is some of the option buttons. So we'll put some options and some radio buttons in there and change the encryption methods. And all we do is change this ER value depending on what is set in some options. So first of all, I will create an option button and we'll say, I'll tell you what, we'll just change 1 bit. So an option is another predefined item. So that's an icon one. And we can now select that, no problem. We can do the same with radio buttons. So let's make some radio buttons. And I'll call them, let's say we just want to flip bit 0 in the encrypted file. Oops, bit 1. Or bit 2. So we should now, it's best if you put a radio group into groups. You don't have to, if there's only one in a window. But I'm going to call them group bit. So that's just a name that you can give it. And all of those radio buttons will work together now. So I click on there. We have an option button that says change one bit, but we can also select which bit we want to select. What I want to do is to be able to grey out these radio buttons, the bit ones, depending on the status of this option button up here. So what I can use is, and I'll never know which way around is the right way around, is we can use auto grey. You can use the hyphen if you want to. The hyphens are all optional, by the way. You don't have to type them. These are all auto grey G bit, which is all of these, and it will work them all out and grey them accordingly. So there we go. They're all greyed out, but if I change this, it will automatically ungrey them all. It takes a whole burden of greying items out, ungreying them in your program. The other thing is the radio buttons in TWIMP. One of them has to be selected at all times. So the top one is automatically selected if you don't select one yourself. You can choose to select one. So if I want the second one to be selected by default, I can just type in selected. And now it's the second one that's selected by default instead. But it will automatically select one for you. When we save in the file, what we want to do is, if the option button is selected, we want to change the EOR value to just change this bit when we're encrypting the file instead, whether it's bit 0, bit 1, or bit 2. The main thing that you'll need to pick up for TWIMP is how we read from these option buttons and radio buttons. So in the save file, save procedure, we will do the same thing again as we did with load file, where we want to use TWIMP read, and we will read from the option button, which we called 1 bit, and then we tell it what we want to read from it. We don't want to read the text, we want to read whether it's selected or not. So I'll call that 1 bit %. We also want to read from the radio buttons. There is a SWI called read group, and in there you put the name of the group, and it will return the name of the item that is selected. So it'll be B0, B1, or B2. So that's a text variable that comes out. So that'll be the bit $. So in here, I could then just write some simple code to say, if 1 bit % is set, then we'll change the EOR value depending on what the bit $. Was, which is what we read from the radio buttons. So that's the name of the radio buttons. So when B0, we'll just change the EOR value to, oh, that's 2. It should be skipping ahead there. And that should be B1. So that changes the exclusive OR value, which will affect this line here during the actual encryption, depending on how the settings are set. And we've read all the settings simply in line 27 to find out if the option button was set and which radio button was set in line 28. So if I drag this to here, and I'll say encrypted off, that should be the default. If I change one bit, no, bit 0, I'll call that encrypted 0. I'll save encrypted 1. And I'll save the file encrypted 2. And all being well, all 4 of these files should look different. They've all been encrypted using a different. Oops. So far, they are. So I've read those buttons in and changed the EOR value depending on whether a radio button was set, whether the option button was set, and chosen a different encryption method each time. We can make the program look a little bit more professional by putting other things in the main menu. What do we have in the main menu at the moment? We have the save item in the main menu. We could put the info button in there. Struggling to type now. We already have that window made. So that's the about window. We could have the load file info, and we could have the saved file info. And what I'll do here is I'll have load file info, 2 submenus. So we've got 2 submenus, load file info and save file info. So we're going to ideally need to create those. There is another pre-formatted window, a file info one. So I'll create 2 file info windows, call one load file info and one save file info. So our main menu now looks a lot more complete. We have our info box, the save box, and 2 oh, I'm not sure why my mouse will not hover over there. That's weird. I think Zoom's messing around again. I can't hover over that bit there. Okay, the save file info there. The load file info and save file info, it would be nice to actually get them updated and have all the information filled in. So we'll do that. Sounds like a big job. But in the TWIMP loaded message and saved message, we can actually type Windows in. So one of the parameters you can use afterwards is, what did I call it? Load file info. And you put a list of windows in here. I'll also do main window in there. Those files will be updated. Those items will be updated with the file name and various other things automatically now. So the load file, that's now completed and filled in. And that's because we put that particular window name into the TWIMP loaded. So the saved one will not have updated. I don't know why they can't hover over there. But I also put the main window in. And the title bar of the main window has also changed to a file name. And TWIMP logs that that window is now a file window. It contains a file. So if I just click on the close button, that should normally open up the filer window, which it does. Now, when I say normally, that's the expected behavior for an application on RISC-OS, but it's not something the operating system does automatically. You do have to program that in. In TWIMP, we haven't had to program that in. It's done it automatically. We can simply do the same in the saved, where we can update the save file info. If we run that application now, we should have 2 blank About Us files. If I drag the load in, the loaded one should be filled in, and the saved one, if I can get to it, isn't. But if I save the file off, save to there, both of them should now be completed. Yeah. So getting some of these windows, which are normally quite standard, but are complicated to fill in from a programmer's perspective, because there's quite a lot of information to fill in on some of these, can be done in just a simple addition of one parameter to some of these SWIs. And as you could see, we had it working in the first place, and just to make it look more professional, it's just a tiny little thing extra to add to that. The only thing I will probably add to that is I will grey these items out until they're actually in use, because that gives us a chance to have a look at the update SWI, because we want to update these items and make them so they're no longer grey. What I will need to do is give these items names, which they don't currently have. So I'll just call them load file info and save file info, just the initials. In the program, you can just use update. Now the update string works very similar to the read. The update SWI works very similar to the read SWI. So we have update, you tell it what you want to update. In here, this would be the save file info. Well, you want to update it to have no grey. There's a variety of different things you can type into ungrey something. And in the loaded one, we want to do the same thing, but we want to do it on the load file info window menu item instead. Now, if we run the application, these 2 items are grayed out. But those update strings, that load file info now exists. Let's go high up. There we go. And if I save the file off, the save file one is now no longer grayed. And the file info works there as well. Something, I'm going to go through a couple of things because people have sent questions in on things that they've struggled on in the past. And we've covered some of the things, like the read, TWIMP read can read from any item. So what I'll do is I'll do it on the load file one because that's quicker. What we can do is we can use TWIMP read, and we can read anything we want to from any item. So for example, we have the load file here. If I want to read from the load file, something's going wrong with Zoom again. There we go. I want to read from the load file, and I want to read the text to text $, and then I want to error that message out. That's the same line as we really had before. When I load the file in, where's my file gone? There it is. It's reading what this icon is. You can't see it because it hasn't updated until after I click OK, and it redraws the window. But there we go. So it's read in the text from that icon and displayed it. But what you can do is you can read anything. from what you've named in there, and you can put a list of them. So we could say text, we want to read the X position and the Y position. They will throw them out in the registers in the same order that you put them in. So then we could say position str $X%. The basic line looks pretty complicated. But if I drag that in, that's now telling us that the icon is now at position 2020. The positions of the icons are from the top corner, top left-hand corner of the screen. So we could change that to, instead of saying X and Y, we could change that to be the width and the height of the icon instead, and it'll read those figures in instead. So the icon is 1160 wide, which is what we set near the beginning, and 52 units high. So that's one of the things about the read command. You can read virtually anything. So we could read whether it's selected and whether it's grey. We could read all kinds of different things. The read is very, very powerful, as is I used it later on, the update. The update, the text here is essentially the same as what you could put in here. So I could put in here, when we load a file, we could update, let's say the main window. Didn't have a dash, did it? Main window. We set the height to 600 originally. We could just set the height to be 900. Don't know why you would want to do that. But if we drag a file in, when the load procedure works, the window height should change, just like that. And again, you can just list multiple things. After that, I'm on that bit of the window I can't click on again. So I could change the width of the window to be, what did we have it, 1200? I could change that to be 1800. I could change the background color to be red. I didn't quite fit. I tried a short one. And now we should see, when I drag a file in, that update will update the width, the height, and the background color. Boom. It's done like that. The other ones that people have had a little bit of difficulty with, and I've had difficulty programming some of these things as well, has been positioning of windows. So the easiest way to position a window, by default they'll open in the center of the screen, but you can also decide you want to open them at a particular position. So you type in a corner and then type in how far in from that corner and how far up or down from that corner you want the window to open. So that should open at the bottom right of the screen instead of in the center now. It does take into account, when you use the bottom, the icon bar as well. So it makes it more difficult for you to cover the icon bar, which most windows normally you wouldn't want that to happen. The other thing that was mentioned on the mug meeting, John mentioned, was he did say, when you have an option button, he did say TWIMP will tick the button automatically for you. You don't have to program that in. But it doesn't send anything back to your program to let you know that it has been ticked or not. Well, you can do that, but you will need to put in an on click on here. So we'll just do on click, click. And in the program file, we could do something like update. Well, why don't we update the text? It's easier to do update text when you update the text of the radio button. Instead of change one bit, just to say, instead of change one bit, we'll just have it say clicked instead. So when I click on that, it's changed that to say clicked. So you can get things. A lot of things will not be returned to your program unless you use an action event like onClick or onChange. There's a variety of different things. And I think that kind of covers most of what I wanted to cover in the demonstration. So does anybody have any questions? I haven't been able to see the chats.
Remember to unmute yourself. If anybody's got a question, unmute yourself.
There's always this pause, Graeme.
There's always a pause, yeah. I'm struggling at the moment to get to...
Don't worry about the tumbleweed blowing across the floor.
No.
No, I'm really fighting with Zoom now. I've lost my share screen.
I can still see it.
It's still sharing.
There it is.
It's still showing.
No, I can't see the chat window. Has there been any questions in the chat? Or
Nothing in the chat. No.
nothing? No.
I'd just like to say it looks an extremely interesting program. You might get me back into programming.
Good. One of the things I did hear a lot about was there's a lack of developers. And so I did want something where people could just get something up and running quickly. So if it gets somebody like yourself back into developing, it would be good.
Okay, I've got a question, Graeme. I could probably read the manual and find out myself, but since you're here, I'll ask it. Can you put a sprite as the background to a window?
The only way you could put a sprite is just in using the normal method. So I've got a sprite file here, which I haven't shown. So in the TWIMP load commands, you'll be aware of this bit so far, you can load in optionally a sprite file that you can use. The only way you'd be able to set it as a background, do you mean tiled and things like that?
Well, I mean, preferably tiled, but I mean, I just want the whole window to be filled with something and my buttons and things to appear on top of it. So I could have a red window if I wanted, or a patterned window, like a desktop window.
It doesn't do any tiling or anything like that. That's an interesting thing that could be looked at. But the way you would do it is probably just something like sprite. I'll need to know what the sprite name is in the file. ENC. So I think you've done this before.
I've loaded a sprite into the window, and what I'm trying to do is get the whole window covered by a sprite and my things appear on top. Is that possible?
So that's a sprite as standard.
Right.
That's probably kind of what you've done already.
Yeah, I've done that. Yes.
What happens is TWIMP will decide where to position these items, and it presumes usually that you're doing them in a list vertically, sometimes horizontally. It doesn't usually overlap them, but if you use the position command, so we've got a width there. I could use the position here to reset that one back up to 2020. So that's the load file.
Yeah.
It looks like a mess now. But the encrypt one is in the background.
Okay,
and the icons are in front. So,
yeah, so I could have a sort of a pattern background.
You could.
Just as a suggestion there, Graeme, or probably this might be an option already, is it possible to paint something directly into the window rather than do it as an icon?
Yes.
So if John has a sprite which is the right size, he could just paint that directly into the window before putting all the icons on.
I think so. Yes.
I don't know.
It's a while since I've done it. But for example, if you wanted to do a circle, you can do a circle filled, let's say, color red. We'll have the position 0, 0 and a radius of say 300. There is a way of putting sprites in as well, but I can't remember how you do it offhand.
Okay.
So you can paint using rectangles, circles, lines, sprites. You can even put draw files in. So a draw file might be an interesting one.
Yes, that might be a good way of doing it. I just wanted,
but none of that's documented yet because I haven't finalised exactly how all the parameters are going to work. Sometimes setting up the manually drawn stuff is a bit slow with it having to pass all of the text. So I haven't quite worked it out yet. But yeah, it's certainly a work in progress and there is things working there. I can send you some details across. I think the draw file, there is draw. So if I just quickly draw something in draw, that's use draw very often. Make it a nice thick line and some kind of color, some kind of fill color. Right, let's just test this out.
right.
If I save the draw file into the application, I think we can paint it using, I think it's called draw file. It's probably I think that should load it in, I think. I might have to look up the details, but yeah, that doesn't work. Might be draw file in there. I did have it working on one demo program that I had. Let's see if I can.
Okay, what about something simpler, just simply a background colour? Was that?
That's definitely easy, yeah.
That's
doable,
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, background colours, they're very simple. You come into your window definition and you can use background or BG colour. When it comes to the colours, you can use the 15 WIMP colours. So I think 12 is cream.
Okay.
So that should be cream background.
Yeah, or yellow. But
you can use a lot of words. None of them are documented yet, but a lot of the common ones. So if we wanted it blue, comes up blue.
okay.
And you can use 24-bit color using the same format as HTML, using the hash in either 3 or 6 characters. So if we want reds, green, and blue, then I don't know what color that'll be, some kind of pinky reddy color.
It's
Orange.
quite a nice colour.
So yeah, so it does the 24-bit color. Ooh, bright pink there. So yeah, if you just want the plain color, that's all in there already now and working. That's
good. What about one colour merging into another? That's obviously way more complex, but it's the sort of thing. I'm just trying to get a more interesting background to my window, that's all, without going to enormous effort.
Yeah, the background color one's the simplest, but then your background color is plain.
Right.
The next easiest one would be to load the sprite in, I think.
Okay.
think you should be able to paint a sprite. I'll have a look up the things. I know there's like rectangle, circle, and line work, but there's some others.
The problem with the sprite is that if you change the size of your window, is the sprite going to still fill it, if you see what I mean?
No, not at the moment.
So the sprite needs to be the same size as the maximum size of the window. Then presumably you can shrink it. You'll see part of the sprite.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not a big deal, Graeme. I just thought I would like my window to look quite distinctive. That's all.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. Not everybody wants everything looking the same, do they?
Well, it's so it shows up as something different from something else. It's just a practical thing, so I can see where it is.
Well, if this is still undocumented because you're still working on it, then you should think about adding tiling to it as well, because that's just repeatedly painting the sprite.
Yeah. Well, I was actually looking at it just yesterday. A bit of a problem. I made a window. I think it had about 600 circles in it, and it took about 3 seconds to open the window. I don't know why, because once the window was open and you were dragging it around and it's redrawing it, it was instant. It's only when you first open the window, and I still haven't figured out what the problem is. So there's something in there not quite right working in there yet. But yeah, while I was working on it, I thought I should have a repeat thing, because otherwise you have to go into your program and program it in there.
They've all gone very quiet.
Huh?
But if you can add like radial fill or something like that between two colours, you get a very nice effect on a window with just two colours.
Can you do that in Draw?
You can do it in Draw. I saw
Yeah,
at the last RUGOL meeting, Drag and Drop. What's his name from Drag and Drop? Chris
Dewhurst.
Chris Dewhurst. He demonstrated, yes, going from one colour to another. I didn't know you could do it in Draw. You can do it. You can do it in graduated fill in artworks, obviously, but he seemed to be doing it in Draw. So it's a draw file option. Do you know that, Vince?
Say that again, sorry.
Where you were at the RUGOL meeting with the drag and drop one?
Yes.
When he demonstrated a radial fill or something, or he was using.
Yes, I can't remember how he did it now offhand, but
No.
I have used it myself in the past, so I know it can be done.
I was surprised, but didn't. Perhaps he was using the 6 point, the Riscos 6 draw. I don't know.
Yes, that's a possibility. I think you have to group the objects if memory serves before it becomes an option anyway.
All right, so you make two objects and then fade them together, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Changing the subject slightly, this is a question I've asked you before, and the answer at that point was no, if I remember rightly. So has any progress been made? Is it possible, instead of having the text file within the application directory, would it be possible to point the necessary TWIMP call at a block of memory which contains the text?
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, that is possible. So we've got a TWIMP load here. So what we could do in here, for example, is we could just use create. We could create second window. We'll call it second. And this is where the second type of quote becomes useful. There's your title, size, 400, 400. There is one slight difference between it, though, which I'll point out. We can then just open that window. So there we go. So that's why I got all of the things that can be done in the actions in the text file can be done by Swise as well.
Yeah,
So there's the
that's
TWIMP
actually
open.
that would solve the thing I'm thinking of in terms of just not having a text file within the thing. But I was thinking in terms of a slightly different thing. I was thinking of like being able to build the text file in memory and then just point the entire thing out.
Yeah, that would work. Yeah. The only difference that you might come across is if you want to make an icon or something in a window, when you get to the end of the text file, when you load it in, or when you get the end of the create string. So when it comes to here, it drops. It forgets what menu and what window you're in. It's deliberate to stop you getting in a mess, because I've done that before. So all you have to do is type in and where you want it to be made. So you could just say like that will create it in that window. So that's
No. The actual text file that you've got your TWIMP stuff in.
Yeah.
Right. I want to dynamically create that within a program, so in a block of memory.
Yeah.
And then tell TWIMP to use that block of memory instead of the text file.
Yeah, that'll work. Yeah. So this basically, this TWIMP create, when this file is loaded in, the load file basically loads it in and then runs create on that. So it would work, yes.
That's not the bit I'm looking at. Where's the bit that actually loads the TWIMP text file in the first place?
Line 4 there.
Line 4, TWIMP load. Yeah, so I want to replace TWIMP load with something which points to a block of memory.
Yeah, so you'd use TWIMP create.
Oh, I see. Oh, right. Oh.
Yeah. So that's in BASIC. That just creates up a string.
But I can put a pointer there instead.
But you could put a pointer, yeah.
Right, okay. Right. I understand.
So that would work.
Slightly misunderstood what you were saying there, but yes, okay, that's cool.
Yeah. But if you wanted to dynamically make them, you can make them line after line, like that. So if you wanted to,
when I was talking about dynamic, I was talking about dynamically creating the text file in memory and then just pointing it in one go.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
Cool. And that's quite easy in, for example, C, because I can just create a block of memory and just one line is creating the text file in one go.
Yeah, I've tried to make it so that you can make whole fully functional programs without using the text file at all.
Good.
Text file is a little bit like, it's more like a beginner's thing. It's good for learning. It's good for practice. It's good for getting things up and running quickly. But it's not the be all and end all of it all. So for example, there should be some programs in here. So I've got one here called flags. And that basically it's just a program. You tick the option buttons and at the top it tells you what your hex result is. You can drag various things in like icons and that. That doesn't use a text file at all. So everything in there is just done through the create options. So there's no load file at all there. I've got start and then I just go straight into create.
Oh, yes. So that's another possibility because you can literally create every element of it, all the various different options relating to that element on a single line, as long as it'll fit in the text string.
Yeah. And if it doesn't fit in a text string, you can create it and then you can use update.
Yeah.
So you don't have to do it all even on one line. So if I have this program here, I've got sprite file f. You could just do your next thing. Have I given it the name I have? Can't type there. Your next line could be, you just want to then update it, say you want it selected and there wasn't enough room on the first line. The icon is now selected on the icon bar. So even if it doesn't, you wouldn't have the problem in C, presumably. But,
no, you wouldn't.
But yeah, you can create things on multiple lines by using create and then update.
Perfect.
But yeah, I've created quite a few programs by just using the create command for each individual element, really. So there's one there. You've got TWIMP create where you've got menu, but you've also got item.
Yeah.
then you've got another item. So that essentially is the.
That's the same as having those lines in the text file.
Yeah, just all in one line. I'm trying to think, create. Yeah, you can put new lines in create now. Because I think you couldn't originally. So I think it just goes all the way through a string until you hit a 0 character, a 0 byte. So it can be as long as you want.
Cool.
So yeah, I think that's another one. Yeah, straight from start just into create. And there's one that I've got, create there in a loop. So in the program I was showing there, where I've opened up that second window, you could just do for X% equals 1 to 20. So you can just dynamically make the things, and we should have 20 icons down there if the window was tall enough. So the text file is brilliant for getting started. And then most people probably would eventually move over to the create command, I would imagine.
Well, I think probably time to stop the recording then.
Okay.
So